Hey guys, welcome to Your Hero's Journey, a podcast where we not only discuss the business and the tactical strategies of what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur, but also the mental and the spiritual aspects of what it takes. And this part is so imperative because it really takes a full 360 approach in order to be successful within these businesses. The mental and the spiritual aspect not only leads you to your ultimate purpose, but it also helps to guide you to ensure that you're showing up for your team, showing up for your customers, and showing up for your audience on a day-to-day way that is authentic to you and the business that you've built. Now, I chose the name Your Hero's Journey very intentionally. It's a story that we're all familiar with our favorite books, with our favorite movies, and even in our day-to-day lives. But we may not be particularly familiar with the steps of what the hero's journey is, although we all embark on the same journey. Every journey starts off with the first step, which is living in your ordinary life. You're living in your day-to-day, and 9 times out of 10, you're not fulfilled with that day-to-day. And that's where you get step 2, which is some sort of longing, some sort of calling, something that is unfulfilled within you. And this manifests for different people in different ways. In some people, they're feeling desperate. They're feeling like they're being pushed by their finances or by their families, and they realize that they physically and monetarily need more. For some people, this is intrinsically. You just have this longing of this feeling of unfulfillment, feeling that you are not living within your purpose. And for other people, it might bubble up in the form of anxiety, having an anxiety attack because you're just suppressing these emotions so much to the point where it is overwhelming. And now your body is reacting because you're trying to train your mind into a certain state of what you feel like you should be doing versus what you were ultimately called here to do. So that is step 2, where you get that calling. Step 3 is normally the refusal of the call. Now, whenever you are operating within your purpose or you get called for your purpose, 9 times out of 10, it feels like such a mountainous task, something that you may not feel like you're the most equipped to handle. And 9 times out of 10, we will then refuse the call, feel like we are not the person for the job, and try to go back to our ordinary lives. But I like to put this in a context of a quote that I refer to often from Oprah, where she says that the universe acts in a very intentional way. It will speak to you first through a whisper, and then if you don't answer, it'll slap you in the face. And then if you don't answer, then it'll knock you on the ground. And that is normally what happens in the refusal for the call. Now, in step 4, normally you have a mentor that comes along. And this is normally a little push from the universe, whether it is a mentor. In Star Wars, it was Yoda, right? Someone who's super wise, who is giving you very, very timely advice or giving you a drop of wisdom that unintentionally is pushing you towards the calling that you know you should be going on, but you may not feel like you are the person for the task. This is the universe's way of reassuring you that this is in fact the path that you should be on or start to embark on. Now, for the rest of the journey, there's about a full 12 steps, but for the next steps between steps 4 to 5, you have the challenges of embarking on the tasks, taking on something that you've never done before. And then during this process, you start to realize who your enemies are, who your allies are. And this is a lot of the bulk of where you begin to establish your wisdom, establish what it is that you need in order to create this thing and ensure that you are living up to your purpose. Because at the end of the day, not everyone can come on the journey. Now, towards the end of this goal, you normally reach your reward ultimately. And that is what this podcast is intended to help you do, to realize what your particular heroic journey is, specifically within the entrepreneurship world, and realize the different variables or the different ways that you can get there. Realize what works for you based off of all of the different journeys that you have listened to or watched in the breadth of these episodes, and realize all of the different ways that can work based off of the network that you may have available to you, the skill set that you may have available to you, or the calling that you've particularly been given. Now, this podcast is very intentionally structured. It is structured by seasons, and each season focuses on a particular industry. And I did this very intentionally because entrepreneurship is such a wide breadth of a category. You have so many different ways to entrepreneurship, and let alone ways to approach entrepreneurship within a particular business. So I intentionally interviewed guests that come from all different backgrounds, but within the same industry. So season 1 will focus specifically on the food and culinary industry. And inevitably, that also leans into the communal industry, building a community, because a lot of the times food brings communities together. So I have 5 very, very special guests. Most of them I'm able to call my dear friends, which allows for really intimate and really vulnerable conversations and insights into details and building a business that you may not have gotten previously. So within the food category in particular, I have interviewed everyone from content creators who have started creating recipes with their own Puerto Rican mother in their kitchen, Alex Hill, who has now over 87,000 followers on Instagram alone and is also a host on one of Tastemade's curated series. Also Dan Sabia, who trained under Jean-Georges, who's one of the most renowned chefs in the entire world and has worked in Michelin star restaurants for decades before he decided to give it all up and start his own company, getting back to the basics of storytelling and bringing intimate people together over food that is cooked over a wood fire grill. Something that you don't even get in Michelin star restaurants, but is really such a different taste and a different patience that it takes to build that food, to cook that food, I should say, rather. And it really just brings a uniqueness and a soul-filling meal that you don't always get in these very fast-paced restaurants. We also have Stanley Lumax, who is the founder of African Chop House and the founder of Teranga, which is a Harlem casual African superfood restaurant right across from Central Park, located within the Africa Center building. Stanley is also a director at JP Morgan, so this is a side hustle for him, but it is his primary passion, which I'm sure many of us can relate to, as we all have numerous jobs and numerous passions that we're running towards these days. We also have Mitty, founder of Schmackwidge, who is from the projects of Brooklyn, and he took his favorite food, the chopped cheese, out of the bodegas and into the restaurants. Not only that, but he also elevated the ingredients of the chopped cheese, where normally in a bodega you would be getting things like ground beef on a roll with American cheese, and he elevated the ingredients to Wagyu on a ciabatta, Asiago cheese, something that we can all really appreciate, and it also allows us an opportunity to flex, because not everyone can say they have a Wagyu chopped cheese. And part of marketing, when you give people the opportunity to flex, the more likely they are to willingly and freely market your product for you. And last but certainly not least, we have Scott Williams, who is one of the founders of Last Lap and also LA and Linton LA. If you aren't familiar with Last Lap is one of the it spots of New York City. If you know, you know. And it's particularly within LES, which is one of the most hip spots within New York. So it takes a lot in order to become the it spot in the it place of one of the most major markets in the world. And Last Lap hails some of the best customers, everyone from Rihanna to Tracy Ellis Ross, Keke Palmer, and I think as of just a couple weeks ago, Coco Jones named it as one of her favorite spots that she has to come to whenever she's in New York. And he curated that so intentionally pre-pandemic, which is a place that is essentially for us, by us. So I say that to say there's so many different ways that you can become successful within entrepreneurship within the culinary industry. And this particular podcast intends to show you all of the different ways that you can get there that works best for you and your journey. So besides the guest, you will have me consistently within each episode. And I am your host, Savannah Hart. And a little bit about me, I started in sports. I am a sports girly through and through. Mainly basketball, played basketball for 10 years. I worked at the Brooklyn Nets for 5 years within the front office as the off-court player development director. I have also done my own entrepreneurship stunt for about 3 to 4 years. I have also worked for a independent premier music agency where I did marketing and advertising for artists' merch, for artists' tours, including YBN Corday. And I currently work for a major independent advertising company where I have accounts inclusive of Nike, McDonald's All-American Games. I've worked on Ford in the past. Some of the biggest names that you know in the marketing industry who also do it really well. So I say that to say I'm interviewing these people who are also my friends with a certain level of professionalism and a certain level of insight into the game to ensure that you, the audience, are getting the most insightful analysis of how to become the successful entrepreneur that you're looking to become in these episodes. Now, beyond my entrepreneurship stunt, probably about 3 years ago now, beyond that, I consider this journey of hosting my own podcast to be my own hero's journey in and of itself. This is something that was placed on my heart probably about 2 years ago, and transparently it was something that I wasn't super inclined to move forward with. Evaluating it from a business perspective, it didn't really make sense to move forward with it. The podcasting industry is so saturated. You don't make money from it until you have a large audience where then you can sell your audience to sponsorships and ad reads, and then potentially you can get money back from those major platforms like Spotify and YouTube. And even then, it's kind of pennies to the dollar of what you're getting. So me being the person that I am and having these businesses where I'm making a great amount of money from, podcasting just didn't make sense. But back to what I was saying, reverting to that Oprah quote about the universe will whisper and then it'll slap you and then it'll knock you down. I essentially got knocked down, and 2 years later, I was just in this place where I wasn't feeling super fulfilled and I wasn't sure exactly what was missing. And in my venture of just searching of, okay, what is going to ignite my fire? What am I looking to create? I came across this outline of a podcast that I created probably about 2 years ago, and reading it just ignited that fire back in me. And that was something that I knew that I had to pursue. So I say that to say I'm on this heroic journey with you guys in my own way. And throughout this season, I do give little tidbits of my experience and how I'm also overcoming a lot of those challenges and those humps that also resonate with a lot of my guests. So it really is such a personal labor of love that I'm excited to give to you guys. And what I hope that you guys get from this is, whether you are in the food industry or whether you're not, this is definitely going to be a season that you can take really insightful analyses on the industry, whether it's how to start a business or to be able to make that jump from your 9 to 5 to your entrepreneurship, or even to know when it is the right time to take that jump, to know what those signifiers are, to know that you're not necessarily operating within your purpose, and ensuring that you are operating within your life's alignment. So with that, I hope that you guys take some really great gems away from all of our guests, if not at least just one of our guests, and begin to start your own hero's journey. Enjoy.